Hey everyone, Justin Brown from Ideapod here. We've just published an article on Ideapod on everything happens for a reason. And in publishing the article, I've gone out and looked at a lot of the other articles out there, and I've noticed that there's quite a few people who argue that it's a myth that everything happens for a reason. And I know that I used to believe this myself. I used to believe that everything was completely random in this universe, and as a result of that, I had very little control over what happened in my own life. So in this video, I'm going to pull out some of the best ideas from our article on everything happens for a reason. Ultimately, at its core, I believe that the people that argue against everything happening for a reason have a particular way of understanding meaning and reason as it applies to this idea of everything happens for a reason. And when we can collapse some of those notions and embrace a different way of understanding meaning and reason, it's much easier to embrace this notion that everything happens for a reason. I'll go through some of the benefits that I think you can experience if you start to embrace the idea that everything happens for a reason. I'll then go through some examples of people who already embrace this idea, and then I'll close with my closing thoughts. Thanks so much for being here, and I hope you enjoy this video. When someone says they don't believe that everything happens for a reason, I think they're using the word reason in a very particular way. They're using it based on a scientific understanding of the world, where there are many cause and effect relationships that ultimately, as far as being a human being is concerned and what happens in our lives, all of these cause and effect relationships are very random and very chaotic and very complex. Therefore, as a human being, we can't possibly exert any control over the fundamentally complex nature of the universe. However, I'm going to use a different definition of reason, the conventional definition of reason, that I think when we really embrace that definition, we start to introduce an entirely new element that really opens us up, including these scientifically minded people amongst us, which includes myself. I think this definition of reason opens us up to really embracing the philosophy of everything happens for a reason. So here's a definition of reason. I'll give two definitions right now, very standard. Reason is a basis or cause as for some belief, action, fact, or event. Or reason is a statement presented in justification or explanation of a belief or an action. What it means is that reason is the meaning that we give to the events that happen around us, and that is something that we do have control over. So we can make sure that the reasons we give to everything happening around us comes from a very well constructed narrative of who we are and what is our place in the universe around us. As a human being, you are a very unique species on Earth where you have the capacity to create meaning. That's something that separates us from all of the other animals as far as we know, where other animals are very reactive to the ecosystem that they're in, reactive to all of those cause and effect relationships, whereas human beings have the ability to imagine what can possibly happen to them in the future. We have the ability to construct a narrative of who we are in this present moment that gives a lot of direction to the life force, to the motor of life that's coming instinctively through us. So we've got a relationship between our mind, the narrative that we create, and what's happening in the present moment. So all of these events that are happening, a lot of the challenges you may be going through right now where you question whether everything does happen for a reason or not, yes, so many of these events are very random and are very difficult to control. But the thing that you do have control over is the meaning that you give, the reason that you give as a human being to everything that's happening all around you. This reason for living exists deep inside you, and when we start to build a relationship with it, it can start to become a more powerful coordinating mechanism in our own life as it starts to give us a lot of meaning in this present moment. There's a fantastic quote from the psychoanalyst Viktor Frankl. He's one of my favorite authors out there, where I think he describes this perfectly. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's way. To explain what I mean, I want to give two personal examples of things that have happened to me recently where the ideas around everything happens for a reason have been really helpful. So I just heard from my ex-girlfriend recently from about 7 years ago, and she's now married and she's pregnant, and she's kind of the girl from my life who every now and then I think what might have been, was I wrong in some situations to have moved on from that relationship. So when I hear about what's going on in her life, of course, it brings it all up for me. So I could think that I've made a huge mistake in the past, or I could live in this philosophy of everything happens for a reason and take on board a lot of the lessons while embracing who I am right now. So in this case, it comes down for me to an understanding of who I am at a very deep level. I'm very fortunate to have been taking the online workshop out of the box with the shaman Huda Yande for the last few years. I've been very involved in producing the workshop as part of Ideapod, and this workshop helps you to go on a very deep journey getting to know yourself. So in my own case, it's helped me to understand who I am, which helps me to understand the way I behaved 7 years ago as I take on board a lot of these learnings. So two very important principles in my own life are: number one, that I will take responsibility for everything that happens in my life. That's the person that I am. That's my identity. That's one of my fundamental axioms. Another one is that I'm very nomadic. I value freedom very highly. Anything that limits me, that keeps me stuck within, then I will always try to break free and just rush away and try to soar in life. So that understanding helps me to go back 7 years ago and understand that at a very deep level, first of all, I need to take responsibility for all of the actions I've had, that it's a learning experience, but also that I was feeling constricted at that time and I needed to exercise this freedom. Coming through to today, I believe that this relationship I had happened for a reason, and that it was there to teach me a very important lesson in life about the importance of commitment, about the importance of partnering with the right person when you can create something together, about the importance of still living with freedom even when you're in a loving relationship. And that forms part of who I am today. I've got a very strong connection with these fundamental axioms that make me who I am, and that's what enables me to look back on these events and think it did happen for a reason. It was a wonderful learning experience, and that's the meaning that I choose to give it. And another example is around business right now. So I'm recording this in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, when so many of us are in lockdown, spending so much more time in isolation. Now, for me as a business owner, it's affected the business quite greatly, with one of our revenue lines has been cut in half overnight. And I know so many other people are facing many more challenges than I am. Now, I could blame the events here on things that happened in a Chinese wet market, so many things out of my control as it subsequently spread all around the world, and I could be a victim in the face of these circumstances. Or I could get back to my fundamental axioms, one of which is to always take responsibility for everything that happens in my life, and to see this as an opportunity to strengthen the business as it goes through a downturn, to try to reduce expenses while keeping all of our staff on board as part of the company. And it's an opportunity to rethink what people need in this modern day and age as new ways of living are coming to the surface. So it's a huge opportunity for us, and that's part of the way I live my life, to live as though everything does happen for a reason, and it all fits in with the conception I have of who I am deep down, as I become the kind of person who will always embrace the challenges that come my way, that will always seek to strengthen the foundations in my business, that will always seek to make things strong and to keep on going in the face of everything that happens to me. Now, I know many people are facing way more challenging personal examples, real tragedy, and I know it must be incredibly difficult to embrace this idea that everything happens for a reason. It doesn't mean that the reasons that we give to things need to be happy and pretty and positive. It could be that the reasons we give to things are about the inevitable suffering in life, and that the sooner we can deal with that, the sooner we can see ourselves as part of this incredible web of life, this incredible ecosystem, and start to really contribute to other people's lives all around us. I know it's very challenging, but for me, embracing that everything happens for a reason has been incredibly useful. Now I'm going to go through the 7 benefits of embracing the philosophy of everything happens for a reason. And I'm pulling these from our article on Ideapod. If you want to check out the article, there's a link in the description when you can go a little deeper into these benefits. So the first benefit is that everything happens for a reason helps you grow from tragedy and adversity. There's a great quote from the therapist Michael Schreiner, who explains that with this sort of psychological bulwark in place, life with all its chaotic randomness and uncertainty becomes less threatening it seems more manageable. This secular version of religious predetermination not only instills courage to go out and face the world, but it also makes the people who buy into it feel special, as if they were singled out for something important, as if the higher entity had a specific detailed plan that included them. The second benefit of everything happens for a reason is that it can give you closure. Let's think, for example, of the times we've been through breakups. It's very easy to fall into a state of wallow and regret and to think what might have been. But when you've fully embraced the idea that everything happens for a reason, it's much easier to give closure and certainty around what's happened. There's a great quote from the researcher Mariana Bakarova. When given closure, we can restructure our past, present, and future in a healthy way through understanding what went wrong and reconfiguring our story accordingly. When we refuse closure, however, attempts to understand what happened flood the conception of our past, present, and future. When you're more able to accept the reality of what's happened, it allows you to close what's happened here and move on to something else. The third benefit of everything happens for a reason is that it can alleviate pain. I'm going to quote from the author of our article on Ideapod, Jennifer Navalon, and she says, "Sometimes it's during the lowest points in life that we gain the courage and strength to emerge as better. In believing that a loss is not meaningless, we give ourselves a chance to heal. It alleviates our most painful feelings and allows us to continue our lives." The fourth benefit of everything happens for a reason is that it gives you constant opportunities to reflect in life. So when the most challenging things happen to you, you're always being reminded to go back within and reflect about who you are and the fundamental axioms or the fundamental principles that guide the way you show up in life, so that you can start to build that narrative, build that meaning in life. And from our article, there's a great quote of the best-selling author Karim Salmansohn, and she says, "When you purposefully choose to tap into conscious insight, you're able to see why and how to bend with stormy winds, instead of angrily resisting the things that life is blowing at you. What may have at first seemed deflating, frustrating, or painful can be experienced with conscious insight as an empowering growth opportunity." Everything happens for a reason leads us to defining moments in our lives. I know in my own life, when I face many of the great challenges, it doesn't knock me over as much as it used to, because I've developed that self-conception of who I am as someone who can face up to anything. I can deal with any challenge that comes before me because I can take responsibility for everything that happens. So when you've built that story deep within, and it's something that's very authentic to who you are, it can mean that whatever happens in your life is simply another moment that starts to define you more and more. The sixth benefit of everything happens for a reason is that it allows you to make sense of the chaos in your life. Remember at the start of this video when I said that life is incredibly chaotic and there's so many different things happening to us? That can be an overwhelming experience to process. But when you've started to construct this philosophy of everything happens for a reason, and that the reasons come from your conception of who you are at a very fundamental level, then you start to take away the anxiety around all of the chaos, and you start to see your place in this ecosystem of life, and you see yourself as someone who can embrace whatever happens, and everything is simply another opportunity to learn and to grow as an individual. The seventh benefit of the philosophy, everything happens for a reason, is that it teaches you valuable lessons in life. There's a great quote from the comedian Jim Carrey, and he says, "When I say life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you, I really don't know if that's true. I'm just making a conscious choice to perceive challenges as something beneficial so that I can deal with them in the most productive way." Change is a fundamental reality of life. Change is always going to bring challenges as well as opportunities. The secret is that the challenges that you face are actually the opportunities when you start to believe that it is happening for a reason and that you have a choice in seeing it that way. I was out to dinner recently with a really good friend of mine, and she asked me, "What's my purpose in life?" I responded that my purpose is to continually nurture my inherent creativity, the creativity that I was born with, the life force that's always coming alive through me instinctively as a part of who I am, and that my purpose is to help other people build a connection with their own creativity. In the face of everything that happens to me in life, it is always happening for a reason, and it is always giving me an opportunity to continue to embrace my challenges head on, so I keep on building this relationship with my own creativity, so that I keep on seeing the opportunity in whatever's before me. I'm very fortunate to have this very strong understanding of who I am and what my purpose in life is. And my purpose is to continually help others to develop that understanding of themselves so that they can always seek to embrace the opportunities of whatever happens to them in life, so that for them to, and for you too watching this, you can start to understand that everything does happen for a reason, and that fundamentally the reason that it's happening is up to you, and it comes from your understanding of who you are. I'd like to invite you to join me in the Out of the Box online workshop. This is the workshop that's helped me to understand who I am at a very deep level. Once you go through this online workshop, you will end up with your own understanding of yourself that will be completely different to me, because your own purpose on this earth is your own. I'd like to invite you to join me in a free masterclass with the shaman Huda Ianda. It's a 1-hour masterclass on embracing your personal power. And the secret is that if you attend that masterclass, you will then be able to enroll in Out of the Box for 50% off. There's a link in the description below. If you've enjoyed this video, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. Every new subscriber encourages me to create more and more videos. It's a huge challenge for me, but it's something that I am committed to doing more of, so we can start to build this community online and get to know each other. Thanks so much for being here, and see you in the next video.